Well, folks, thanks again for joining us today, and thanks for the newcomers joining the show day-to-day news, Stockwell Day. We give you insights that you're not going to get from mainstream media. And looking at very interesting items coming out of the federal government's Liberal cabinet meetings, we see the Prime Minister of Canada, Mr. Carney, he has put a pause, or if not a halt, on one of the environmental concerns and guidelines, supposedly, that was going to be really hurting not just the car industry, but was it even going to be effective in terms of lowering emissions, either in Canada and around the world? And so what he has done on the whole issue of the mandate for electric vehicles, that was supposed to be, believe it or not, for those of you not from Canada, Canada had put in a guideline, a restriction that said that by 2026, all vehicles, light duty vehicles made, 20% of them would have to be electric vehicles. And that's been seen increasingly as just not wise on a whole number of levels and not even effective. He's put a hold on that. And some people are saying he's now considering putting a hold on a restriction that is in place still in Canada, that by 2035, now try and get a hold of this, by 2035, which is not that far away, the restriction on automobile makers was that no more vehicles being made with gasoline engines, no more. It all had to be electric. A number of us, when this came out a couple of years ago, were absolutely shocked and have been speaking against it. Looks like that one may be on hold. And part of this may be science-based. I hope it's all science-based, because there's more and more reports coming out on environmental issues and on emissions reductions that need to be considered, that are saying that the situation is nowhere near as drastic as some of the environmental extremists are making. So let's have both sides of science reports being considered. Also, along with this, now in Canada, I don't know about what country you may be in, but in Canada, in terms of polling, the top of mind issue for Canadians is, in terms of the environment, only 4% of Canadians now saying it's a top of mind issue. Along with that, we have within the Liberal government, their members of Parliament, there's a number of them who are saying they want to start up an environmental caucus of MPs who don't like the direction that the Prime Minister is going in terms of backing off of some of these mandates on forcing people on electric vehicles. Now, interesting enough, heading up this new caucus of Liberal MPs concerned about the environment is a member of Parliament from Quebec. Quebec, remember, as a province now, not federally, has made a determination that they're not going to allow pipelines to cross Quebec to take refined oil and gas products from Canada, which are the best refined in the world, being able to ship them to Europe so that European nations can be able to break the stranglehold that Putin has on them by selling them Russian oil. And yes, he still does that even though there's sanctions in place. So to that Quebec MP who's firing up this new environmental caucus, who doesn't want to see these severe restrictions on being relaxed, I would just ask him, would you please petition the Premier of Quebec and ask him why he wants to starve European nations of liquid natural gas from Canada, but at the same time, he's okay with bringing in Saudi oil. Let's take a look at how that develops. On the issue, too, of what we're going to do with what the federal Liberals are going to do relative to the gigantic looming debt and deficit problem and unemployment figures rising, which are always a result. Yes, there's concern with taxes, but always a result mainly of fiscal and monetary policy in a particular country. And so he's saying that they're adopting a Buy Canada policy, which would make it against the law to be buying in a major way, doing procurement from other countries, notably the US. Now, anytime a government brings in a policy that says you as an individual or as a company can't buy from the bidder or the seller of your choice, it always means there's price gouging that's going to follow that. When nobody else is going to be allowed to sell products, even to do with defense or with military or with infrastructure or massive projects for municipalities, if you can't buy products and services from other jurisdictions, then your own local jurisdictions are tempted to price gouge you, to raise their prices higher because there's less competition and sometimes less quality. These particular programs that outlaw a country or the business people from within a country buying from other countries never do well, rarely do well. There's times it can be argued for sanctions, but this is going to have a significant problem. And at the same time, the Liberals are launching a $5 billion, they're calling it a $5 billion response fund, where politicians will decide which industries, which businesses should be getting massive subsidies from government. Again, anytime you launch programs like this, where politicians decide who gets big dollars for their businesses, you open up to corruption, you open up to political involvement where there should not be political involvement, and consumers always wind up getting hurt. Think about lowering taxes. Think about dealing with a regulatory regime that suffocates small and medium-sized business. Let's approach things that way and not on yet another giant fund, which has the danger of becoming another slush fund. In the province of British Columbia, we see the effect that the renewed federal conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, is having, because he's talking about doing away with what we call the temporary foreign workers program, where foreign workers are brought in to do jobs, frankly, that Canadian workers just won't do. Tough jobs, hard jobs. They still get paid well, but in the agricultural and other communities, these are jobs, fast food industry, that many young Canadian people won't take. So we have the temporary workers program, foreign workers. And yes, Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the Conservatives, is quite right in having that scrutinied, but canceling it altogether might not be all that helpful. And now the NDP, the socialist premier in British Columbia, obviously seeing the effect that the Conservatives are having federally in terms of wanting to back off on this foreign worker program. They're also saying there's concerns, but I'm telling all politicians at all levels, one of the areas you have to look at is the social safety net, which should be and needs to be there in times of need. But when it gets to the place where it's almost attractive to be on, let's say, an employment insurance program, I'm not saying all unemployed people want to be, no, but there is a certain significant percentage of people who don't mind the idea that if you work for several weeks of the year, you can then get a pretty sizable payment every month for the rest of the year. Let's look at these incentive and entitlement programs also if you're going to have any kind of effect, and see young people being willing to step into entry-level jobs, which may not be all that glamorous, but which provide very good experience for future steps in their career path, and also helps businesses like fast food businesses, construction, agriculture industry to get workers hired. On the area, again, of trying to get the attention of U.S. President Trump, and on the question of, are we really doing and seeing if we can look into dealing with issues that are an irritant in the minds of Americans. We need to look at those issues, see which ones are legitimate, and see what we can do about them. There is concern, and it is real, about our northern borders being a crossing point for illegal immigrants. And this is involuntary illegal immigrants. This is young people that are smuggled across the line, that are brought into the U.S., and that are forced into horrendous types of work. And what's happening is groups from Canada, and we're trying to determine just how big a problem this is, will take these young people who are coming from other parts of the world. They come into Canada, and then they take them on, Canada has some pretty wide open borders. So they force march them through forests and across dangerous crossing points to get into the United States and then sell them into various types of activity. Canada needs to send and show a strong signal that we're increasing the amount of money going into the restrictions of guarding our own border. And again, and we shake our heads, we don't know why federal liberals hate to get tough on crime. But these are the type of criminals, people doing this type of thing, they get charged, they get dragged into court. Often they have little or no bail, and when they're sentenced, it is frightfully low. We've got to send signs, not just to Canadians, but to our American friends, that we're serious about this type of illegal border activity. Failing to do that is just going to mean ongoing punitive tariffs against Canada. Talking about people being influenced, there was a fascinating scene that unfolded in the Senate hearings that are going on in the U.S. right now relative to RFK Jr. and the supposed Make America Healthy Again. And the scene, if you're able to watch that, of RFK Jr. being attacked in some of the most vicious attacks that I've seen in a long time on politicians. And he's not really a politician. He's been appointed by a politician, of course, to run the health agency out of the U.S. And when you see people like Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, who are avowed socialist leftists, who hate billionaires and hate big companies, and he exposed them with the very provable and real figures in terms of the amount of money that left-wing politicians like Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders get annually from the pharmaceutical industry. In Elizabeth Warren's case, if you're looking at Canadian dollars, upwards of $1 million coming to her from pharmaceutical companies. Bernie Sanders, hundreds of thousands of dollars coming to him through political donations from Big Pharma. All I'm saying is money does influence and can influence the way you think. So let's take it carefully with their criticisms when you see RFK Jr. going after pharmaceuticals, and at the same time, these senators are getting huge amounts of money from the pharmaceutical companies. You know, it's so important to understand how mainstream media can affect how people think about things. And there's an increasing disregard among mainstream media outlets to publish so-called facts that are not even facts, and they don't worry about the fact that they might be disproven later, because they know that when a headline comes out that's sensational, even if down the road, a few days or weeks later, that's proven to be false, the main impact that the mainstream media wants is to influence people, many cases wrongly, over to their side on a discussion. So in the ongoing Israeli-Palestinian Hamas conflict that's taking place, you'll remember the heartbreaking story and the visuals of a young Gazan boy by the name of Amir. And it was Anthony Aguilar of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation who had brought this story forward, said that this boy was murdered, really just brutally shot in broad daylight by the Israel Defense Forces. Says they shot him while he was trying to get food. A starving boy shot to death by Israeli soldiers. And he talked, Mr. Aguilar talked about holding his hand while the boy literally died in his hands. It shocked the world. It went viral, as many of these stories do. Not that there aren't atrocities that don't happen, not that there aren't heartbreaking things that don't happen, but when stories like this get continually headlined and go viral, it has a huge effect on what people think about the conflict. And now, after investigative work by a foundation in Gaza, not in the U.S., not in Israel, a foundation in Gaza, we find out that the boy is actually alive. He never was shot. His name wasn't Amir. His name is Abdul Mohammed, and he was the central focus of this fake news story. And he's kind of in hiding with him and with his mother because they're afraid of what their Palestinian adversaries that we're talking about Hamas might do to them for exposing this lie. So, we constantly are pushing back on mainstream media. Please fact check your stories, or else we might start to think you're biased in one direction or another, heaven forbid. On the sports scene, opening night of the NFL, exciting to watch, except you probably saw the interesting scene where you had Jalen Carter, defensive end for Philadelphia, got into a bit of an altercation with the Dallas Cowboy quarterback, and they wound up spitting at each other. Now, Jalen's going to pay a big fine. He's going to be kicked out of some games. I guess they were spitting at each other, and a lot of fans found that kind of disgusting. Well, it is kind of disgusting. Maybe they could actually take a page out of the NHL, the National Hockey League, for which Canada is famous. When players have a dispute there, they're a little bit more manly about this. They take off their helmets and they duke it out rather than spitting on each other. I'm not promoting violence, but that scene caught a lot of viewers by surprise. Big breakthrough in the Canadian scene in tennis when you see them in this International Open winning the doubles tournament there. So take a look at that story, very encouraging. And let's close out on another story from, Taylor Swift never seems to fail in getting the news item along with her recent engagement. That was a great story and I wish her well. It seems like there is a poet in Florida who is suing Taylor Swift, or wanting to, for $30 million. She says Tay stole some of her best lines. And the Florida poet is having a little bit of difficulty pursuing the case because, well, it's, to get a case like that filed, you actually have to have you or your representative deliver the notice of that to the person, and they just can't seem to catch up with Tay. Hope it all works out, because it's also, I'm not saying who's right or who's wrong or if there's evidence on this. And let's face it, billionaires have a tough time these days. A lot of people going after them for things. So let's, have a little heartfelt sympathy for billionaires. And I don't know, maybe it's where Taylor got her line when she talked about the Dead Poet Society. This poet is not quite dead. And is Taylor thinking about her great line where she says, "I wake up with your memory all over me." Not saying how that's going to go, but let's keep an eye on it. Thanks for joining us today. We'll catch you tomorrow.